Hello, this is Danny Draven, and welcome to the Darkwalker commentary track, the director commentary track, and this is 16 years later. So I get to sit here with you and watch this campy little movie for the next hour or so and give you a little bit of insight on the making of this movie, which I cannot believe was actually 16 years ago. So here we are. We're in Sanger, California, and this whole movie was shot on location at a real life haunted attraction called Hobb's Grove. It was actually the original title of the movie was called Hobb's Grove, and then we ended up changing it to Darkwalker. And it was it had a brief early release back in the day, and then it just kind of went out of print for almost a little more than a decade. And now we're back with this special DVD edition of this campy, ridiculously silly movie, Darkwalker. So, anyway, here we are. I don't remember. I actually don't remember most of these people's names, but I remember what I do remember is that a lot of this movie was shot with local people, and local people who literally I met the day of. They would just come out and I would say, "Oh, you're my caretaker," or "Oh, you're the family," or and that's how a lot of this was made. So, like this particular scene was an existing part of the haunted hayride, I think. And this family here, the mother and the two twin daughters, I don't know why we ended up thinking, oh, twins, let's just throw them in the movie and have them laugh creepy and point at things, and that's all we ended up doing. I remember my interaction with them was very short. It was just sort of like, oh, here's some twins. Oh, that's creepy. Put them in a dress and let's just have them giggle and point at stuff. And then that's what we did. And apparently what happened later on is these twins ended up being involved in some sort of controversy, some sort of white supremacist something or other that and I ended up getting contacted by like news agencies and stuff wanting to comment on it, and I'm like, are you kidding me? We had like 200 people come out and we threw a bunch of people in here. I don't know any of these people, so I had like news agencies contacting me like wanting to know why is the film industry in Sanger supporting these white supremacist girls. And I was like, what are you talking about? We had 200 people coming out for this stuff. And I kid you not, there were 200 people that came out for this stuff. I mean, and they just wanted to be in it, and they were we threw them in, like, right, all this stuff you're seeing in the opening titles, these are all local people that worked at the haunted house. So we ended up just shooting what they did on a normal basis. So for the record, once and for all, the Darkwalker and none of the producers, director, anybody involved in this movie ever supported anything of that nature. So, and stop asking me about it. Anyway, so we continue on here with again a lot of local people who worked at the haunted house. I think what we did is we actually just walked through the haunted house during one of their open nights, and we just shot it, and then we ended up making it into this little opening piece that you see here. I think it was even more than 200 people. I just remember that we had it was just endless amounts of people coming out wanting to be in this movie, and the only way to really get as many people in it as possible was to just shoot a lot of these little segments like this and just cut together like a little montage. And I think you see a lot of people later in the movie in the midway, like during Halloween night and all that stuff. And that was actually really during Halloween night. We just ended up shooting it as people were coming in, and just that's how it was made. It was kind of like having extras without having to really, it was just like, hey, come to the Halloween attraction like you would every year, and we'll just randomly shoot people. And that's kind of what we did, and that's how a lot of this movie was made. I mean, this movie was only made for $15,000, and shot in like 10 days or 15 days or whatever it was, and it was literally like a crew of like nothing. It was me, and it was like maybe 6 people usually at one time, and it was absolutely freezing in October in this Sanger, California, which is kind of near Fresno. So yeah, it was freezing during making this movie. That's all I remember, was being very cold and having a lot of layers of clothing on, and still being very cold during making all of this. But this whole movie came about through Chuck Williams, who produced it, knowing some of the people that had worked there, or actually owned the place. And he came to me, to make this little movie. So we sort of teamed up and made this crazy, campy, ridiculously silly little movie in no time. And here we are at the Singer Tower. And again, we shot all of this sort of very randomly. Like this. This guy was actually just... We drove by this guy, and he was actually just out and about... he was out and about cutting trees down, and I said, "Hey, can we shoot you for the movie?" And he's, "Oh, sure." And we just ended up shooting him. So, again, this guy, he was just like, "Hey, man, there's a part in the movie that has to do with them cutting the trees down on the land, and you're obviously cutting trees down, so you mind if we shoot you?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So we ended up shooting him. And then here we are in our first scene with the two dogs that actually lived there, Ginger, and I can't remember the other dog's name. And this is David DeWitt, and again, this guy, I think his name was James, was a local guy, local hire, came out. I think there was some local theater people that came out, the caretaker, and some other people that came out that were just part of like the local Fresno theater. And again, we had just endless amount of actors that wanted to be in it, and we put as many people in as we could because we couldn't pay anybody, so we ended up using a lot of people that would just work for free. This movie, kind of in retrospect too, you should know, why the movie kind of looks the way it does. It's very kind of ugly looking and, very sort of grainy and old looking, video-ish. And the reason for that is, back when this movie was shot in 2002, the cameras were not like they are now. I could shoot a movie with my cell phone right now on 4K, 2K, and it would look light years better than this movie looks. But at the time, that's what was available to us, was digital video. And so we shot this on DV cam, I think, and we ended up running it through a very expensive film-looking process. And the end result is what you see here. And even that doesn't look good. So now, at that time, nobody was shooting 24p. Everybody was, only except for people like George Lucas. It was very expensive to do that. So we ended up shooting on DV and just having a sort of film looking done on it at that time.
That was perfect.
And we had a DP on the film, but he was only on the movie for like maybe 2 days, and we ended up having to let him go. And I ended up stepping in to DP and direct the movie at the same time. So I ended up being the director of photography for like 80% of this movie, but it was very run and gun, and obviously the movie doesn't particularly look great. So it is what it is, a lot of it was just running and gunning and putting up lights and party gels and just getting it shot, and that's how we made it. And this is again this caretaker guy who's completely dreadful in the film, but he was just some local, I don't know, stage actor. And he obviously brings his sort of stage acting campiness to the movie. The movie's campy. Nobody is sitting watching this movie thinking that we had made some serious piece of art or some Oscar-worthy film or anything. This is a shoestring budget, formulaic slasher camp fest. That's all it is. That's all it will ever be. And honestly, this movie was out of print for like 10 years. Like it had a brief release and then it was out of print. And then now I'm sort of bringing it back just as a sort of campy, classic from Nether Year. And that's all it is. These actors are so campy, and it's like the whole movie story is just ridiculously formulaic and stereotypical. All these characters are so cardboard cut out. Look at these guys. You got the stoner and the jock and the token black guy and the goth girl and the daddy's girl. It's absolutely ridiculous. So when you see this, I hope you see it in context of the the campiness that we were doing at the time. You know, we weren't setting out to make a masterpiece here. So, and it's weird because like there's still this kind of strange following for this film. I mean, I personally, look, I mean, I directed the film, but I mean, I personally not a big fan. But people have actually there's like a little bit of a following for this film, and I don't really get it. But the Darkwalker ended up spawning 2 Halloween masks, and the masks look way better than the Darkwalker does in the movie. But it spawned 2 masks. If you just look up Darkwalker Halloween mask online, you'll actually see it. You can buy it for Halloween. It's really, really, really cool, both the masks. And then, people have one lady showed me they had tattooed the Darkwalker on their leg or arm. It was actually a really good tattoo, but I'm kind of like, of all the things you could tattoo on your body, the tattoo must have cost more than this entire movie cost. But things like that, and there were drawings, and I think there were some cards, and there was soundtrack. There was all these other things that we did along with this movie, and it's just so funny because when you watch the movie, you're just kind of like, what? So anyway, the actors here are all we have our token goth girl here, who's in our token daddy's girl here, and our sort of meek girl who overcomes her fears girl here. Again, very stereotypical horror cardboard cutout characters. But that's, I think, why people like to watch this this campy little movie. I mean, we shot this Hobbs Grove. I mean, it was kind of like I remember some of us were gonna sleep on the floor in this place, and ended up being too cold, and we ended up getting hotels. I think a lot of the actors too a lot of them ended up sleeping in double rooms, and some actors even paid for their hotels themselves because they didn't want to sleep in those conditions. The conditions were terrible in this film. I mean, this scene in particular, I remember it was actually raining outside. You can't tell because the light I put outside to blast in, I was trying to make it look like it wasn't raining, but it was actually flooded outside, completely flooded. We had putter generators that we had to use that they had at Hobbs Grove to sort of power, because all the power was out. But we just had to keep shooting no matter what, and we ended up getting the putter going, and we ended up putting a light outside. I think some of us got somebody got a little electrocuted too because of it was so wet. But it was terrible. I mean, the conditions were horrible. I mean, it was like, we were eating like Taco Bell every day. I mean, it was just, the food was dreadful. I mean, the conditions were freezing. People were doubled up in hotel rooms, and it was truly like the worst conditions, I think, on any film that I've made, and I've made, a few, and this one though, I remember the conditions were bad. I mean, not just, food wise, but I mean, like, just in the environment, was just cold and foggy, and you drive out to this Hobbs Grove in the middle of the night, and there would just be like this mist out of John Carpenter's The Fog around all the time. It's very hard to see. Very hard to keep warm. I mean, that's, I guess my whole commentary could just be me complaining that I was cold and hungry. But again, this place was huge. It was, I don't know exactly how many acres, but it was a lot of acreage, and they had built it up over many years. And so we had all these little buildings. Like, this is what they called the Midway. And it was like sort of this middle area. I think they have bonfires in there every year. And then that little building in the back was sort of like a little office area, and that's where we did a lot of our casting. These actors we ended up casting. These were not local actors. Our main cast. The main cast was actually, with a few exceptions, but like Clive, and I think her name was Emily. This is Clive. Rick Irvin, who was in a few my other movies, over there on the right, and Jill Small, Mike's age. These guys were all cast in L.A. And again, we when we cast them in L.A., it was like, again, putting it in perspective, at that time, we were sort of casting out of a friend's house, which is a total no-no to do today, even any day, really. We shouldn't have done it back then. But we were casting out of the house, and it was kind of like, hey, come over. And so they would come in the backyard, and they would do a little a scene or two in the backyard, and that's how we cast them. And it was something that you shouldn't do, particularly now. I mean, there's no need to now. I mean, now you have casting places that you can get for free, and everything can be, people can send their reels in online and that sort of thing. But at the time, we were getting headshots in the mail, and we were calling people and bringing them in and looking at their reels on VHS tape. I mean, that's just how we were doing it back then. And this is, Brenda, I think Brenda on the left, and David DeWitt, I think, on the right. I think they came through Chuck. They were friends of Chuck. But Chuck Williams, our producer, I mean, he's a guy who, we worked together ages ago on a film called Horror Vision. So we had known each other for years before we made this movie, and he is still, I think he's still active, making his movies as well. I think he's doing like faith-based movies now. But Chuck was kind of one of those guys that'll walk in anywhere, ask anybody anything, get anything you need for free. So he was really good at that. So a lot of kudos to Chuck for being able to get us this location, this all the things that you see in this movie. He was able to get so many things for free. I mean, to make a movie on $15,000, a feature film on $15,000 in any era, I think is difficult. And this is just, I guess, a testament that it can be done, even if the end result is a bit of horror campiness. So, this is our little intro to Hobbs Grove on the Midway. And I remember shooting this. I remember I did a bunch of dolly shots, and then I ended up it was taking too long, so I ended up just taking the camera off, putting it on my shoulder, and just shooting it all handheld, just to get the cover, just to get some sort of a coverage on the scene, because we were running out of time. I mean, the script was, I don't know, the script was like 100 pages long or something. It was a lot. It was like 90 pages long, but it seemed to be coming up very short. So we ended up having to shoot, the movie needed to be 80 minutes, because at that time we needed to have a movie that was like 81 minutes to get it into Blockbuster Video and Hollywood Video and all that stuff. So we ended up having to, the movie, I think after I cut it together, was under, it was like 65 or something. So we ended up having to pad this movie out a lot. And at that time, what we would do to pad movies out was we would usually make like a 3-minute opening title sequence, which you just saw earlier, and then we would pad the end credits out so they would be 4 or 5 minutes long, and then we would shoot like little montages in the middle of the movie. And one of the things we did to pad that out was to shoot what you're about to see here, is the tour of the haunted house. And that was just them sort of walking around randomly, showing off the haunted house and all that sort of thing. And that was in the script originally, but it was very short. But we ended up padding it out, so it got very, very boring. But we ended up doing a lot of that just to make the runtime. We used to do that a lot back then too. I mean, some of the movies I did for Full Moon, Horror, some of that stuff we did, it was dreadfully painful to do. But we ended up having to do it in order to make the runtime. I remember that sign. That sign was actually custom made for us. I think Chris, I think his name was Chris. He plays the sheriff's deputy in the movie. He helped us tremendously on this film. He's a really sweet guy, great guy. He ended up, actually, I think he made the sickle, the Darkwalker's sickle, and I think he made that sign for us as well. And you'll see him. He plays the sheriff's deputy. His name was Chris. He was a real joy to work with. He always came out with his family and stuff. I remember he was also a local who I think probably still even works at the haunted house there. this exterior of this haunted house was pretty cool too. I remember it was everything was there for us to shoot. You know, we didn't bring anything. It was just sort of we showed up and we just shot. You know, we brought the actors and the extras and the random local people that we threw in the movie, and we just ended up sort of turning on the camera, putting some lights up, and shooting what was written. I mean, the script was written around this place. So, speaking of the script, the guy who wrote the script, I remember, was Dan, I think his name was. I ended up giving him some old Macintosh computer, just I think as payment to write the script. You know, I don't even think he got paid, if I remember. I mean, I think he got paid like $100 or something. But I felt so bad that he wrote the script and he didn't get paid. So I think I ended up giving him, because he didn't have a computer at the time. And I don't know if he was going to do it on a typewriter or what. So I ended up saying, hey, look, write the script. Here's a couple $100 or whatever. And at the end, you can actually have that entire Mac. So I gave him like one of those old Macs, with the big giant box and the big giant, tube TV and all that stuff. And he ended up writing the whole script on that. So, again, this was all improv. This was all just, hey, let's walk through the haunted house for the next 2 hours, and we'll just have flashlights and POVs and a lot of the POV stuff I ended up having to go back and shoot. That was just me and Chuck, I think, shooting it. Me walking around with a flashlight strapped on my camera. Like this stuff here was all shot after the fact, and then just shot the actors, walking around, chit chatting, and a lot of this is just total BS, total them walking around bullshitting and. It was a lot of it was just to sort of set up the haunted house, but it was also to pad the running time out of the movie. And honestly, I would have cut all this stuff out if I could, but we needed the running time. It's like my mom's kitchen. That's what he said. Rick just made up random stuff. Rick would just say stuff like, it's like my mom's kitchen. And then he would say, I think earlier he was talking about baked chicken. And it's like, oh, Rick, that's all we needed. He was just like randomly talk about like weird stuff. I remember actually all of them did really. All this stuff was just, again, this was just there for us to shoot. It's so hokey. Their clothes, all of the... I think Chuck was under the table in this scene, shaking the table. All of their clothes, too, I think it was, in order to save money, they were all the actors' clothes that they owned. It's one of the ways on independent movies that you save money in wardrobe is you ask the actors to bring their own clothes, which is, of course, a terrible way to have to make a movie. You don't want actors to have to bring their own clothes, but... in this case, that's what we did. We asked everybody that was cast to bring in their own clothes, with few exceptions, because some people, the people who die or went during the scenes when they die, they're wearing clothes that we actually had bought. Some actually were the clothes that they owned, but we ended up giving the actor, I think, a few bucks to buy their clothes because we knew we were going to destroy them. We were going to get blood all over them, and it was going to be very messy. So we said, hey, do you have any old clothes that you'd like to wear in the film? And we would be willing to, buy those clothes off of you because we were going to tear them up and make them bloody. And so some of those we ended up doing. This was the... there was like a clown room, and then there was like a creepy that was the party room, and then there was like this creepy doll room upstairs. It was great because look, I mean, when they weren't shooting, we had the full reign of the place. This sort of we didn't have anybody looking over our shoulder, I guess is what I'm saying. Nobody telling us that we had to leave by a certain time, and that's the best way to make any sort of movie, at any level, is to not have to have somebody give you sort of free reign of the place to where you don't have to be out at a certain time or you get penalized for going over. Because we were shooting, I don't remember, we were shooting, 18-hour days, 18-hour days to get a lot of this movie shot. This scene looks like crap. Oh my gosh, looking at this. I remember it was raining outside and we ended up having power issues, I think. So the best thing we could do was get a Jenny going that they had and put a couple lights in the back, and so you have all these really horrible looking like red and green lighting mixtures and stuff in here. Oh, dreadful.
That is the end of our tour. Everybody have fun?
Wasn't even scary.
And that's why I had, we had them flash the flashlights on their faces as much as possible, because we just didn't have the light. It was just sort of like dark, and we just needed some sort of light. I mean, I remember shooting this stuff with Allie. I think Allie was a singer, if I remember right.
I cannot be lost.
I honestly don't know what any of these actors are doing now. I know a few of them never acted again after this movie. I wonder why. And a few of them may have done some other stuff after, but a lot of these people it was their first movie. Absolutely their first film, and some of them may have done other movies after. I really didn't keep up. I mean, I know Rick Irvin did some movies after with me, but the movie we did after this was a movie called The Offerings, and he's in that. But other than that, the other actors don't know whatever happened to any of them. So if you're listening, hope you're doing well. And they were all very young and very green. A lot of them didn't know how to hit their marks and that sort of thing. And and it shows. It shows in the film, the amateurness of the acting. Shows. But that's what adds to the sort of ridiculous campiness of the movie, is sort of that amateur, the amateur hour with everything. The sort of ding dong editing, and the dreadful cinematography, but I think it makes up for it with some of the monster stuff like this right here with Chuck, the coming in and just tearing the fuck out of the place. And this scene, he just busted through that door and he tore the fuck out of that room. I didn't know what to do. I thought he was gonna swing that sickle. And Allie, who was in that scene, she actually busted her nose in this scene. This was scene she actually hurt herself. She ran her nose into the wall, which you can actually watch in the making of. If you watch the making of, you'll see, and the blooper reel too. Actually, you can actually see what happened, and you can see her in the making of talking about it. But yeah, she got injured in that scene. She was fine. She just banged up her nose, is all. She shot the rest of the movie and everything. It wasn't that bad. She didn't break it. She just had like a bloody nose, I think. She bumped it into the bookcase. But yeah, Chuck came into that scene and was just like tearing the place up. And that sickle that he has in his hand, just so you know, and please do not ever do this. That was real. That was it was real metal. It was very sharp. We tried to dull it, but it was really, and all those scenes with the actors, that he had that thing, and luckily he was in control of it. But this scene right here, the hand was actually my wife's hand putting the glove on, and then me filming it. but yeah, so it was very dangerous in retrospect. A lot of the earlier films that I made, it's really hard sometimes for me to talk about because I know that some of the stuff we did was just not smart. And a lot of it had to do with like this chainsaw. I mean, that was, we took the here it has the blade on it, but we actually took the blade off of it for the fight scene that you're about to see. But yeah, the sickle though, I remember I was always concerned when I was shooting scenes with that damn sickle, not only for my own safety, because swinging it around maybe hit me holding the camera, but also of course for the actors. I was more concerned for the actors than I was for me. But so we tried to there wasn't a lot of staging that we did with the scenes. The blocking was kind of minimal. It was just like, hey, stand here, go here, run here, and then I'd say action, and I'm shooting it. I mean, I'm shooting all this material here, and I would just say action, and it would happen, and I would just start filming. So there was very little pre-blocking that went on with this stuff. I remember this scene right here. I was in the trailer shooting, and Chuck was outside banging this trailer. It was, and at some point, I think we knocked it off its blocks. I mean, I was really concerned because this thing was old. It was just something somebody abandoned, I guess. And we were shaking it around. All this stuff was improv. I mean, all this stuff. I said, okay, come out, run out. And then he runs out with the chainsaw and just, okay, fight scene. And Chuck grabbed the chainsaw and he's twirling it around. He was trying to do his sort of tribute to Leatherface here, I think, with the chainsaw. And I'm standing down there, more blood, and Scott McGowan, who did the Darkwalker costume. Him and his, I believe, girlfriend at the time, did a great job with this costume. His costume took hours to get into, and then we would have to take Chuck and in the costume, and we'd have to have him. We'd have to find a puddle of mud, and then that puddle of mud, we would have him sort of literally just lay in the puddle of mud and roll around in it, stand up in freezing weather in late October, and then have him shoot scenes. That's how we got the suit ready. Was just, okay, he's in the suit, okay, get him in the mud, have him roll around in the mud, and then we'd have him shoot the scene. That's how the Darkwalker rolls, I guess, is rolling in mud. And then we have this scene is so cheeseball. I can't even bear it. It's so ridiculously bad. Oh, and here's Brad Potts. So Brad Potts, this was actually his first, I believe, was his very first feature film, and he went on to actually be in a lot of other things. He plays he's an ex-Marine, so he played a drill sergeant a lot, and a lot of like commercials you would see on TV. He was like that drill sergeant, and he was in I think Zombies vs. Strippers for Full Moon a couple years ago, and he's been in a lot of other films and commercials. But I guess I'm proud to say that I gave him his first feature film role, and that was this movie as the big buff sheriff. He kind of made it his own with the little accent and everything, you know. And that's Chris back there trying to find this guy's ding dong. It's not a finger. I think he said. Oops, it's not a finger. So Chris helped us tremendously on this film. He's the guy who made the sign and everything else as well. Now this creek was just next door to Hobbs Grove. It was actually not their property, but we ended up just sort of going over there and pulling out the camera and putting a dead body down there, and we ended up sort of, you know, guerrilla filmmaking it. This whole movie was really, there was no permits involved in these movies. They were just, it was guerrilla filmmaking 101. I mean, we just jumped in and we would shoot things. We were, it was really, really underground filmmaking, guerrilla filmmaking. I mean, that's how I learned to make a lot of films was having made a lot of these underground movies. You know, the little thing like the chewing tobacco and stuff like that, I think that was his idea, because I don't remember telling him to ever have chewing tobacco, but I remember him having it in his mouth all the time and spitting it out. But Brad was he was an ex-Marine, so he was a big dude. He was one big dude. Really nice guy though, really, really super pleasant, and really nice guy to work with. You know, I remember we did have to rent that outfit, and it was very expensive. For some reason, it's really expensive to rent police cars, police outfits, police belts. It was expensive to do that, and we ended up having to have that patch specialty made too, because it says Sanger County, and I remember we ended up having to pay for it to have those made as well. You would have think we would have been able to use that money and hired, like, you know, better actors or better I don't know, something, but it ended up going into police outfits, which is, in retrospect, is completely ridiculous. I think the owner of Hobbs Grove lives in that house, and we ended up, or I think that might be her guest house or something. We ended up saying, "Hey, can we shoot in your guest house?" And he was like, "Yeah." So we ended up just taking whatever houses we could do. You know, this is actually Sanger High School. I remember we stole some of these shots and this is not Sanger High School. We ended up taking that was my wife, by the way, that walked by a minute ago in the red. We ended up using as many people as we could get for extras in this ridiculous school. It's not a school, actually. It's a pool. It's the public pool. And they had these outdoor lockers, which for some reason somebody thought they looked like school lockers, which they don't. They look like gym lockers, and that's what they are. So we went to the public outdoor pool and ended up trying to fake it as an outdoor high school, which looks, I don't know. I mean, I think it looks ridiculous, but that's what we had to use at the time. And I ended up just trying to shoot it in close-ups as much as possible so people wouldn't be like, "Oh, those look like gym lockers." It's ridiculous, but that's what we did. That's what it is. It is what it is, guys. It is what it is.
Bro, baby. Peace out. Be good, y'all.
So Sanger High School, we ended up, grabbing a few of those shots, and we did get permission to do that. It was just we just couldn't shoot any of their students' faces, and we didn't. Yeah, and we ended up, a lot of the people walking by and in the background, a lot of them were actually crew, people like the grips and everything. They were all just start, oh, walk by camera. Okay, walk by camera again. Walk by camera. Walk by camera. It's like the same guy walking in front of the camera like a million times. But you'd never notice unless I told you. So I have no idea like what that even, this character, that's Laura actually on the left. She's actually the owner of Hobbs Grove. A lot of these people are actually employees of Hobbs Grove. I don't know any of them, but I remember I just had so many people that wanted to be in this movie, and I was like, okay, Billy Bob and Joe and Ed and Bob or whatever. I have no idea who you people are, but just run in there and start picking up corn and put it here and act like you're fixing a sign, and then I would shoot it, and then I was like, so again, I have no idea who any of these people are, and then that's why I got so it was so crazy that these two twins that ended up having some being in the news because they were involved in some of this neo-Nazi crap, and then it's like, and then people are coming back to the movie, and then I'm getting contacted like, oh, I can't believe you put them in there, and I'm like, what are you talking about? There's like, we put 200 people in this movie, and none of which we know any of these fucking people, and it was the most ridiculous thing ever. So yeah, I mean, and then here, this caretaker. Oh. The caretaker, I have to apologize for, guys. I have to apologize for the whole film, but really, the caretaker is just like so ham bone. It's like fuck. It's like literally like watching an episode, like a really bad episode of like a Scooby Doo, with all the caretaker. Oh, you darn kids are meddling again, that kind of thing. I mean, it's silly, but that's what makes it so campy, and that's what makes it like you want to watch it because you just can't believe how like ridiculous everything is, and ooh, blood. Oh my God, the land is bleeding. Oh, look at the random gooiness that we stuck on the tree. I remember shooting this stuff. Oh my gosh. Where is that? I don't know what happened to that sign. I wonder if they ever kept that. Now, this really is opening night at Hobbs Grove. That's their real ticket. That's their real ticket booth. These are real people at the concession stand. These are just random girls, random people. But what we did was, we just shot. We just said, well, why don't we just shoot on the real opening night? That way everybody's coming out anyway to go through these haunted houses. And then we'll just bring the cameras out and we'll just start shooting everybody. So everybody that came in, when they bought a ticket, it was sort of like a release, we had like a release. So by entering this premises, you agree that we're able to shoot you. So everybody that came in had already sort of signed a release just by being there. So we literally had like hundreds of people that were just going around, and it was just like me. Because this wasn't an official shooting day, so it was just like me and Chuck, and then like one or two other people, and it was just me like randomly shooting all these people, just having fun, having a good time, being themselves and everything, and that's how it was made. Now this stuff is an actual shooting day, when we would have the actual actors shooting script pages. But again, these people, these people walking through. I think that guy there was it Glenn. He was one of our grips, I mean, I don't think I've ever been on a movie where it was like there was just a plethora of people that you at any time you could get to walk through your scene, and it was kind of like for free. None of these people got paid. It was just total random people coming out, knowing that we were shooting a movie out there, and just offering their services. Like, hey, can I help? Can I stand? Can I stand around or whatever? Again, these are more stuff from opening nights. We sort of cut them in to make it look like this place was active, when in fact it's just me and Reef and Chuck out in the woods shooting all this stuff.
Hey, B-Man. I should be in the
And this is Clive Hawkins. I'm not sure what he's up to these days, but he was a joy to work with as well. I remember he was really excited to be in the film, and I was really excited to do all these scenes, and I think he was even more excited to get killed in a movie. But I remember shooting that. I mean, that was real. I remember that fire back there was, we almost caught the place on fire a few times. It's really a bad idea to use candles and fire in any sort of dry environment, but especially this dry environment where he's literally wearing like some tiki stuff, and there's all these things that could catch on fire, I remember, and he's smoking. Oh my gosh. No fire permit. Nobody even knows we're out there, except for the owners, of the place. I don't even remember. I remember this film. I remember shooting this and lighting it and everything. Ugh. Yeah. We used to just splatter blood on the walls because it was kind of we would run out of time, and the only way to do it sort of quickly was to sort of cut to the wall and just splatter blood on the wall. Otherwise, it involved a whole setup, and so we ended up cheaping out a lot to have to shoot those scenes like that because we just ran out of time, and we either shot it or we didn't shoot it. This is the dumbest thing ever. I remember shooting it and thinking how dumb it was. Actually, I remember shooting the whole movie and thinking how dumb it was. But I remember this one in particular. I was like, why can we not get ahead? And then, it was like, it's so obvious, like the guy's in the box. I mean, but it was in the script, and that's what we did, and that's how we shot it. So I don't know, but I think the idea was like they also believed that he was in the box. Faking it when in fact he wasn't faking it, but we would never know that unless there was like a close-up or something at the end that like his head fell off and his spine was sticking out of it or something, but we just didn't have the time or money to do it, so it ended up just looking stupid. Now this whole thing between these two, this whole sort of like gushy ham bone love story thing here is just embarrassing, and it totally doesn't work, but I don't know. I think that's part of the ham-boneness of the movie, though, is this sort of like, I mean, you just, for me, you just, the guy who plays Josh in the film, the character of Josh, I should say, you just can't wait till the guy dies. I mean, I know actually all of these characters are so one-dimensional. You just can't wait till they all die. And I think that's why people continue to watch, is because they're like, man, that guy is so unlikable. I can't wait till the Darkwalker kills him. And this movie is not about the actors, the main characters, which I probably should be, but it's more about when is the Darkwalker gonna fucking kill somebody, because these characters are driving me nuts. And because I mean, every time somebody dies, I mean, I celebrate. I'm like, oh god, they finally killed that guy. Oh, they finally killed that girl. Oh, that fucking girl, they finally put an axe in her head. So and I think that's what part of the campiness of it all too. The campiness fun of it, I should say, is just waiting for somebody to get killed by the Darkwalker. The movie is the Darkwalker's movie. It's the Darkwalker's movie. That's why the movie's called Darkwalker. It's not called Cheeseball love story between these two actors, or it's not about this silly haunted attraction and whether or not it stays open or not. It's just about the Darkwalker coming back and just slaughtering everybody. Friday the 13th. It's Jason's movie. I remember we shot a lot. In order for me to shoot a lot of these wide sort of master shots, I had to put like this fisheye lens on there. It was an adapter because it was all, obviously we weren't shooting with prime lenses on this movie. We were just shooting with a regular zoom lens, but we had to put this sort of fisheye lens on this thing in order to sort of open up these scenes a little bit, because it was but you ended up seeing some of the curvature on the ends, for those of you indie filmmakers out there. Not a good idea. This I believe was a insert, or it was not an insert day, but it was an actual shooting day. But it was after we shot the movie, and we ended up shooting this, I think, on Chuck's. A friend of Chuck had a ranch, and it was out. I don't know. So this was not Hobbs Grove. It was a ranch somewhere in, I think, somewhere in the valley, in LA somewhere. That we said, oh, you have a ranch? Oh, we have this scene that we didn't shoot. Can we come out and shoot there? And it's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So we ended up getting to shoot here like totally free. So we brought the actors out and, just shot this little like funeral scene, which is kind of ridiculous. Why they're at a ranch, for a funeral. I guess they just buried her in the trailer. They buried her in the backyard, or they took a walk on the horse property after their friend was buried, to get some fresh air, because as we all know, fresh air is next to all the horse shit that you could smell around there, particularly in that barn back there. Again, it's ridiculous. It makes no sense, but that's what we did. And here's where she goes, oh, don't leave me. I have these visions. And this guy is like the dumbest ever. Oh, really? Oh, let's investigate it.
More like sensed images.
I don't get it. What do you mean sensed?
I mean like images. I don't know what
Wow.
it is.
I remember that. I do remember shooting. Do remember shooting this sort of.
I mean, like what?
I remember having to bounce light on their faces, actually. I remember the thing kept falling down.
When I see things, it's like an old film sputtering around my mind.
Yeah, I mean, look, in context, you just have to really watch this movie in context, to say, hey, this is just a bunch of people going out and making a little movie for no money, and it was a very amateur attempt, and it was just, it was fun. It was fun to make, It wasn't the funnest film I had to make, but because the movie had a lot of problems. But anytime you're making a little indie movie, it's always fun. It's fun usually for the filmmakers, but it's something fun for the actors. Everybody wants to be in a movie or involved in a movie in some way, and I think on this sort of low budget shoestring level, it allows people to get involved. This guy here on the right, I don't remember his name, but he was actually in the movie much more. I think it was it Mark? I don't know. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But he was actually in the movie a lot more. And unfortunately, the scenes he did were just so unwatchably dreadful that I ended up cutting him out of the film. So anyway, but I don't know why that matters. But yeah, there was some stuff where he was doing like auditions, and there was another scene where he was trying to help get people all excited, but it was just, the scenes were just bad. They were just stupid, and they didn't need to be there, so we ended up cutting them out of the movie. We ended up cutting another scene out of the movie between her character and her mom. And again, it was just painful to watch, so we ended up cutting it out of the movie as well.
What? Nothing.
So what you're seeing is actually the best the best of what we had, with actual scenes having been cut out of the film.
So why'd you move up here? My father died.
Jill here, who's about to die. God, there was I can't remember. There was something going on in this scene. I just remember it was freezing, honestly. Some of my recollections. I mean, this movie was 16 freaking years ago. Some of my recollection of the stuff on the set was just me being me being cold, because the actors had little heaters and stuff, and then when they weren't shooting, they could go back to the green room and it was heated in there. But the filmmakers, we were just standing out there, the grips, and we were just standing out there just being cold all the time, waiting for the actors to get there and so on, and setting up for the shots, setting up for the next shots, striking the lights, and moving the lights, because we moved all over this place. I mean, these locations were on 100 acres out there, and so we'd have to move from one to another. Then we'd have to run power from a generator most of the time. There was power believe it or not, there were actually power outlets in the forest that we were able to tap into, and luckily we ended up not having to pay for any of the power that we used. That was one of the advantages of shooting there. They said we didn't have to pay for the power, which was great because we didn't have the money anyway. And then some of it we'd have to run out a generator too, and that would only power. It was a small generator, so it would only power 1 or 2 lights. So that's why you see a lot of this kind of shitty lighting here with just very, very simple lights being beamed in through the trees, because we just didn't have anything else. And then you'd see stuff like this where I'd have a little bit more light to work with, but we'd have to put party gels on stuff to sort of get a little bit of like that cheeseball moonlighting, and give it that Halloween look, because it's supposed to be a Halloween attraction, so it's supposed to have Halloween-esque like party lighting, and that's why it's lit like that. It's because it's supposed to have that sort of party lighting. And that, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. It's been 15 years since I've seen this film, so not impressed, but, this fucking caretaker. Of all the people that die in this film, you would think that we would kill that fucking caretaker, but we ended up killing all the actors instead. Gosh, it was cold that night, I remember. I mean, bone-chilling cold, guys. Bone-chilling cold. We'd have layers of clothing on too, and man, it got cold there at night, because we would shoot from like 6 p.m. to like 6 a.m. So we were shooting like 3 a.m. out there. It was just unbearably cold. And I don't. So obviously this is a prop that was there, and we're like, oh, let's just make it look like it has weight. So we ended up adding all these sound effects, and it's just obviously it's made out of styrofoam, and let's just crush her head. I remember. I think I made this whole scene up on the spot, because I think she. Oh, that's a good. I think she had another death scene planned. But for some reason we couldn't shoot it, or it wasn't practical to shoot it, which is usually the case on these movies. You get there and you're supposed to do one thing, and you end up having to just make up something else on the spot. And that's, I think, what we did with that spot. I said, hey, look, how about we do this? How about you just smack her in the head, she falls down, and you pick up one of the tombstones and you just crush her head. And we're like, yeah, okay, great, okay, good, because that's something we can shoot in like an hour. Great, okay, boom. And then Chuck would come in, and we did it, and boom, she's down, and we boom, put some blood and an eyeball in her face, which was made out of a grape or something, and we just put a bunch of blood over it, and boom, we're done. On, boom, next to the on to the next scene. I mean, that's how we made this movie. It was just fucking, a lot of it was made up on the spot. There was a script. Didn't make any sense. You should have seen the first script of this movie. Oh my gosh, the very first draft of this script was a completely different thing. It was like, it was the worst. It was one of the worst things I've ever read. It was so bad. It was like there were horses and magic coins and like just really bizarre stuff. And obviously we didn't make that. We just sort of, and we told the writer. I mean, we said, dude, the script is just not good. Sorry, and write something else. So he wrote something else, and that's what we shot. But even that one had a couple drafts that we had to go through just to make it, mainly just to make it practical to shoot, because I mean, I think even that one still had a horse in it. We're like, guys, we're not going to bring out horses. I mean, somebody actually did bring their horse out for that opening scene, which I don't even know if that. Honestly, I don't remember if the horse was even in that scene. But the trailer, I think she brought her horse out that night. So we would just constantly like rework things so we were able to just shoot it, and so we ended up changing a lot of stuff. One thing, like some of the death scenes I remember definitely were supposed to be a little bit more elaborate, and they weren't. And I was always really good with shooting on my feet, or thinking on my feet and shooting off the cuff. So I'd say, guys, this is taking too long. We're not going to do it. Oh, just a little more time. We can do it. I go, guys, no. We don't have the time. We don't have the money. We got 15 more pages we need to shoot. We're not going to do it. Here's what we're going to do. And I would just roll in there and say, okay, Darkwalker's going to come in. He's going to hit you in the head. He's going to throw this. You're going to fall on the floor. and we're going to splatter blood all over the painting or splatter blood all over the deer head or whatever, and that's the end of the scene. Oh, okay, boom. And then we would shoot it in an hour, and we were done, and we were on to the next scene. And that's how it was made. That's how we would get through these scenes. Otherwise, we would have never got through these scenes because, again, we had like no crew. We had plenty of people who wanted to be in the movie, and plenty of people who wanted to stand around and watch us make the movie, but we had no experienced crew. You know, the crew, it was their first. Nobody knew what a stinger was. Nobody knew and as the DP. For most of the movie, I would say, "Hey, go get me a stinger." What's a stinger? It's a fucking extension cord. Gosh, that's what would take so long. And bring me a mini mall or bring me a 2K. What's a 2K? It's the big light. Bring the 2K. It'd be like stuff like that. And that took so long for me to get the right stuff out there in order to be just to do it, and then to find the power and to put a light up to shoot it, because we didn't have a professional crew. That wouldn't happen with a professional crew. And I've worked with union crews, I've worked with professional crews, and man, stuff happens. Boom, boom, boom. It happens when you want it to happen. But on this film, again, it was sort of it was all like homemade, and the people who were helping us on the crew, with maybe a few exceptions, they were very amateur and very green. And on an independent film, the worst thing you can have is a green crew, because the green crew slows you down and it ends up taking longer to make. The best thing you can have on an indie film is an experienced crew or experienced people, experienced sound guys, experienced grapher, experienced grip. You can have inexperienced PAs or whatever, but the key people need to be very experienced, particularly in indie filmmaking, and it'll make things go so much faster. So I guess I should just plug my book right now. So just go buy my book at DannyDraven.com, The Filmmaker's Book of the Dead, How to Make Your Own Heart-Racing Horror Film. And you can make amazing movies like Darkwalker and so many others on your own for very little money. So there you go. I remember, this scene doesn't even make... okay. This scene, I remember... I think we just totally randomly make this up. He was supposed to... I remember the script... He was supposed to do something else, and he ended up just like, oh, well, let's just have him randomly put a few rocks back in place for no particular reason, and oh, lo and behold, he finds a walkie-talkie. Oh, this fucking caretaker again. I mean, the guy walks. He even walks ham bone. It makes no sense. He's anyway. This little structure here was very poorly made, and later on you'll see us sort of in here throwing people up against walls, and we actually made one of the wall. We threw this wall here on the left, actually fell down. Luckily it didn't kill anybody, but the gaffer kept crawling up on the top and wiring lights, and this wall right here on her left, that one behind there, that wall actually completely fell over several times, and we had to sort of rig it back up, which it wasn't up very well. And it was very heavy, so, if it would have to fall on somebody like an actor or something, it could definitely do some damage. We actually broke this table later on in the movie, which you'll see. We threw Josh on the table, and the table snapped in half and actually fell down and hit Kathleen's knee. It just gave her a little bruise, but it was still a little dangerous. The stuff we did was just, I would never do that again. And I would hope you listening, if you're a filmmaker, that you would not do as well. It's just kind of silly, some of the stuff we did. This dialogue and this performance by this caretaker in this scene is so freaking funny. I mean, I don't know what he was doing here. Honestly, I think when I was shooting this, I probably didn't care because we were behind schedule. But he's just like the man. He had this voice. That's not even like his real voice. It's like the beyond this land and blah. It's like it's just dreadful.
No one's heard from
This, I think, was the very first day of shooting, the very first shots. You know, again, we just found a picnic table in a park after craft services, after they you know, because these burgers were from like McDonald's and Burger King and stuff. So this is actually, I think, their real lunch for the day. At a picnic table in a public park, we set up this really cheap poor man's dolly, which is basically PVC pipe on a skateboard. And I think we ended up shooting this, going back and forth to sort of give it a little bit of motion, and it ended up looking like this. But yeah, we PVC dolly and just some random shots of people. And I remember this park was really noisy. There was a lot of construction going on across the street, and I had to ADR, I think, some of this, and it was kind of a little pain in the butt. You can tell how amazing our craft services was by looking at these half-eaten Burger King sandwiches and those Keebler cookies on the table. Now, this is actually a real museum, the Sanger Museum. This is a real historical museum in Sanger that they gave us permission to actually come in and shoot this scene in. And those books on the table, which I wish they wouldn't have given them to us, but those books on the table are actually real historical books from like the 1800s and on the history of the town. And these actors were sitting, you know, looking through these books, and they, you know, who knows if they picked their nose or they, you know, touched a hamburger or they had grease, you know, on their fingers, but they're looking through these freaking 150-year-old books and doing these scenes. And I, at the time, you know, honestly, we were shooting it, and I didn't really realize it until I asked the guy, like, I thought art department may have brought these in. He's like, no, those are from our archives. I was like, oh my gosh, don't put these on the table and let our actors look through them. They'll probably tear the pages or, you know, get stains on them. He let us do it, so we ended up doing it. But luckily, I don't think anything was harmed in the making of this scene. But yeah, all these historical objects in this museum, I remember. The guy that ran the place was super nice and really happy to let us use the for his real museum to be in the movie. I remember.
I'm sorry, you guys.
You know, I mean, we got a lot of production value in the film for an indie film made for $15,000. I mean, we were shooting at multiple locations, and it looks like we were to bring all this stuff in, but but again, like I said, it was, we just shot with what we had, you know, and what we could get for free, whether that's lighting or free locations like this. You know, we would just pull things in as we had them. I mean, even props, you know, like you know, or we would just, like, hey, does anybody have any earrings? Or hey, does anybody have a bag that looks like this? And oh, I got one that looks like that. Or oh, my brother's got one. And then they would bring it to set, and then we would shoot it. There was no art department budget. There was no wardrobe budget, you know, until after the fact, because we needed to get police uniforms. There was no budget at all. Can't you tell? Why are you listening to this commentary? What is wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. But no. I mean, it's sort of a $15,000 lesson in how like, no matter how low your budget is, you can make things happen if you have the right resources and the right people involved. You know, you can get things. You know, and I think they're about to go visit this old lady, and there's a whole story there. But that again was another free location. I can't remember whose house that was. Here we are in sort of the rural Sanger area. God, I don't remember whose house this was. It may have been the owner's house, but the other side of the house. Because one side of the house was going to be Maggie's house, which you saw earlier. Yeah, I think that's what we did. And then the other side of the house, which looked completely different, we ended up using here to make it look like they're going to visit this old lady in her retirement home or whatever. Yeah, that's what it was. So that's another little trick we did in low budget filmmaking was we would use one location to be 3 locations essentially. I think this was actually the back door. We ended up using it as the front door here. So there's a story about this old lady. She the first old lady that came out was perfect. I mean, she had the perfect look. She looked like she was like 100 years old, and she had this raspy, the land, this raspy old voice. But she was a horror to work with. She was like this cranky. Just imagine like the crankiest old lady or the crankiest like grandma that you could get, and put her in this rocking chair in freezing weather, and then having to shoot a scene with her. It was ridiculous. So we ended up running out of light, and we couldn't get the lady to come back because she was having health issues, and it was this whole deal. And anyway, so we ended up getting this lady here, who was super sweet. This lady was great. She was totally into it, and I don't know. She's probably, if she's still alive, she's probably, I don't know, probably in her hundreds now. But we this lady came out and did the scene, no problem. The problem is I didn't like her voice. She had like sort of, it was too nice of a voice. It was sort of like the Mrs. Claus or something. It was very not like sort of a scary raspy voice like the first lady. So the voice you hear here is actually the voice of the first lady who didn't come back, because I liked her voice better. I used her voice instead of her voice. Little stupid movie trivia there for you. Those who defile the land must die. So ridiculous, but I loved the way the first lady did it. I remember that. I think that's Rick Irvin's wife. Rick Irvin, who plays BJ. That's his wife Angie over there on the left. She actually came out to set to visit that day, and just to visit, and ended up putting her in the movie because we needed people. Hey, we need some people to look like they're they're working as well. I'll do it. So we threw her in there as well. And I think the lady on the left. Oh man, I don't know. I think the guy on the porch was the AD. Actually, was that Joseph? Yeah, our AD. We ended up throwing him in there every now and then. I have never put so many random people in a movie ever, and I hope to never put so many random people in a movie ever again. That was the gift shop. The real gift shop, Halloween. Again, this is all stuff from Halloween. The night before Halloween, Halloween night, particularly Halloween night. I remember. This was one of my more memorable scenes that I shot. I remember because I did all the lighting. I remember I had some HMI lights that day, and I was blasting them through the wood, and you got like a nice little sort of horror movie blue Dario Argento kind of vibe going here with this blue light. This was actually, I think, this light was actually a very expensive light. I think we actually broke it and ended up paying for it. It actually fell over. I think the wind blew it over. There was another occasion too when the wind blew over a light and damn near missed one of the kids and almost hit him on the head. Which would have definitely would have killed him if it would have hit him on the head. It was a 200-pound light, 150-pound light, and it wasn't that we didn't secure it. It's just that the wind blew it over. And luckily nobody was standing by, but it could have been very dangerous. This scene was totally randomly made up, this fight scene. I remember it took maybe an hour or two to shoot it. Chuck came out of there and they just sort of had at it. I remember Brad hit him in the nose. Actually really hit him in the nose under that mask. And probably gave him a little bloody nose. And this stuff was this sickle in the wall and all that. That stuff was just made up on the spot. It wasn't scripted. We're just like, oh, the Darkwalker fights the sheriff and kills him, and it was like that was like the extent of what we were gonna do. And then we would just start making things up. This scene, I remember, Rick. I think Rick kept slipping her the tongue during this scene. I don't know if he was just into his character or he was into her or what was going on, but I remember I think she slapped him off camera or something once or twice. It was kind of funny. Emily, who was supposed to be our stock, you know, Fairuza Balk character from The Craft in this movie.
They call orgasms.
This is actually one of my more favorite death scenes actually here, because we really destroyed the shit out of that room.
Baby, you keep talking like that, and we're not.
You're not gonna need 10 minutes, baby. That was actually one of Rick's better death scenes, I think. And again, this was all she threw all that stuff because I was shooting this scene, so she was throwing all this stuff at camera, and I remember a few times I got clonked in the head with some stuff because she would just randomly throw stuff at the camera. Now you can see in the behind the scenes me hitting this door from behind, you know, to make it move like this. That's me kidding and kicking the door, making it move. That was a fun scene. This was a fun death scene to make. That was a fun shot too, right? I remember. And that door we totally destroyed. And Hobbs Grove, we asked them. We said, "Hey, can we destroy a door?" They're like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." So ended up shooting that and totally destroying that door. We destroyed a little bit of things on this movie. A lot of some of the property we broke. I remember accidentally we broke the concession stand area. You know, there was a table and some idiot sat on it or something and ended up cracking the whole thing in half and broke that and broke a wall. We definitely broke a lot of things. Luckily, the owners were really cool and really supportive of us during the making of it. And you know, they understood that things get broken when you make movies. And we did, believe it or not, we actually did have insurance. We had production insurance for it, and the owners actually paid for the production insurance, believe it or not. So if we burned the place down or somebody, you know, got injured or whatever, we were covered. Yet we had no money to make the movie, but we had insurance. Or money to pay the actors.
Something bad.
So this...
No, this is no time for trick or treat.
We're serious. Have you seen any decades?
Boy, I don't remember much about the make it. I don't even remember shooting this. I remember these are all our stock footage shots that we shot on Halloween night to make it look like there were people here, when in fact, of course, there are no people here. It's just us four. You know. So run and gun, man. The way we did this. But if you're listening to this commentary, you either were involved in the film or you like the film because you like campy horror movies, which is great. I like campy horror movies. I mean, you'd have to like a campy horror movie to make a campy horror movie. But I mean, I remember, I love like some of the campy horror movies, particularly from the 80s. Those are my favorite, like just sort of like the underground campy horror movies, because they have a certain like charm about them because they're so ham bone and cheesy and ridiculous. The situations are ridiculous, the acting is amateur, the monsters are usually kind of cool, but the gore is usually pretty cool. And that's just, there's just a certain funness to it. You can sit there with friends, you can drink beer, hopefully whiskey with this one, and just eat some popcorn and just laugh, because you're supposed to laugh. If you're not laughing at this fucking caretaker right now when he's delivering this dialogue, there's something totally wrong with you. If you're sitting there thinking that like we went out and made this movie without a certain sort of tongue-in-cheek vibe to it, you would be mistaken, because we made this with that in mind. Like, it's a cheesy horror movie. That's what it is. That's what it always will be. And this little movie has like this little following. People are like, oh, the Darkwalker, And Chuck, I think, went to conventions and promoted the Darkwalker and his, and his mask and all that stuff. And I think he still has the original mask. I think somebody made me a head at one point of the Darkwalker, which I ended up giving it away. And then, there was a soundtrack, and we did a movie poster, and we did all kinds of like really, really crazy stuff for this movie. I remember that was fun. This scene was fun to shoot, by the way. Her top came off actually when he was dragging her back in there. he dragged her and he grabbed her boob, and then he sort of pulled her back, and then her whole entire top like flipped up, which you don't see in the movie, of course. And she was all laughing after. I remember it was a total accident, of course. That's actually a real pig's heart we had to go find. And that bridge that they were on was actually over like this sort of swampy, gross water. And man, that thing was not made. None of this stuff was made structurally sound, because I don't know if the kids made it who worked there or what was going on, but like this place here was like literally put together with nails, and it was so poorly made, which actually makes for a very dangerous environment. And I didn't know a lot of this until things started to fall over and break, and then you start looking at it like, oh my God, this whole entire freaking wall was being stood up with 2 nails, and like this table, for instance, was like barely put together, and we thought, oh, it's probably a really structurally sound table, so let's kill the guy on the table. And Chuck, Chuck's like very in the moment with these Darkwalker scenes, like this stuff, and he just busted in the scene, is throwing people around and throwing people into walls, and none of this stuff was choreographed properly or choreographed at all. And then they just went, when I said action, they just went full on. So he threw him into the wall there, broke the wall, and then he throws him on this table here, and he breaks this table. I think I used the take after he broke it, so you don't really see him break it. But the table broke. It fell down on poor Kathleen's knee, who's over here, in this shot. And then he ended up having this shot right here. Boom. That was the most dangerous shot in the movie, and I don't know why. He was supposed to do that. That's a real sickle. I mean, it has a real point on it. He could have missed within 3 or 4 inches and probably hit her in the head with it. It was the dumbest, guys. It was the dumbest thing ever. Please do not do this kind of filmmaking. It's not smart. And it was a 1-take deal. And Chuck's like, no, I can do it. So and we were still filming. So she just started screaming, and then he took the sickle and he boom, right near her head. And I remember I was shooting because I had the camera on my shoulder and we were shooting it. And I was like, oh my God, no, I don't think you should do it. And by the time I said we shouldn't do it, we had already done it. So it was over, and boom, you see it in the movie. So that's the story. Some of the crew walking behind here, none of this makes any sense. So she walks out, and all her friends are dead, but of course everybody thinks it's part of the Halloween attraction. That's why everybody's ignoring her. They think, oh, she's just another one of the characters in the Midway. So anyway, that was that. Wow. I mean, 16 years ago, guys, when we made this film. This is the absolute last commentary I will ever do on this film. And I just wanted to do sort of this one last commentary to sort of get out, my experience from making this movie, how it was made, why it was made, and hopefully you had fun listening to this commentary, and you watched this movie in the proper, hopefully you watched it drunk, but if you watched it in the proper context, a tongue-in-cheek context, then I think you would enjoy it. Because the movie, again, $15,000, it was fun to make, and it's meant to be that sort of campy horror classic. So 40 years from now or 80 years from now, people will still be watching a movie like this, So anyway, that's the end of this commentary, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. None of these websites are up anymore, but you can always go to DannyDraven.com, and you can get copies of my other films, my other books, TV show stuff. Just doing a lot of other things beyond this movie. I assume if you have this DVD and you're listening to it, you're probably a collector or a fan of the film, or you're just curious, or whatever, and that's perfectly cool.